Today, we're diving into something that's talked about all the time, but is still so widely misunderstood, and that's ADHD. We're going to really break down what it is and what it isn't, and use the science to get past all the myths. Just think about that for a second. What would that actually feel like? A mind that's always on, but the only message you ever get is that you're just not putting in enough effort. This question right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the ADHD experience, an experience that's so often defined by feeling completely and totally misunderstood. All right, let's get into it. Because to really get a handle on ADHD, we kind of have to unlearn what we think we know. It's time to swap out some of those old, tired myths with what's actually going on. This right here, this flips the entire script on ADHD. You know, the biggest myth is hiding in plain sight, right there in the name, attention deficit. But the reality isn't a lack of attention, not at all. It's a difference in regulating that attention. It's a challenge in controlling what you focus on, when you focus on it, and for how long. So, yeah, this is the official textbook definition. But like we just said, that first part, attention deficit, can be super misleading. The really crucial thing to look at are the other impacts: impulse control, regulating your emotions, and that big one, executive function. Think of executive function as the CEO or the management system of your brain. And this is the perfect example of the other side of that regulation coin. It's a thing called hyperfocus. See, when someone with ADHD is genuinely interested or engaged in something, their focus can be absolutely incredible, like a laser beam. This completely goes against the whole idea that they just can't pay attention. The challenge isn't a lack of focus, it's being able to direct that focus, especially when a task isn't naturally stimulating. So, let's dig into the why of it all. If the problem isn't a lack of effort, then what is it? Well, the answer isn't about character or willpower. It's about biology. It's in the brain itself. Honestly, if you take away just one single thing from this entire explainer today, please let it be this: ADHD is a real, documented neurological difference. It is not laziness, it is not a moral failing, and it is absolutely not a character flaw. Getting this is the very first step toward any kind of effective support. So what are these differences we're talking about? Well, for one, brain imaging shows us that the key networks for executive functions, planning, organizing, self-control, they just develop differently. And crucially, it involves two key chemical messengers in your brain. Think of dopamine as the brain's motivation molecule. It's what gives you that feeling of reward when you finish something. And norepinephrine, that's kind of like the brain's focus filter, helping you tune out all the distractions. In an ADHD brain, the systems that use these chemicals just work a little differently. And this is where the science connects directly to real everyday life. Because that dopamine system is always on the hunt for a bigger or more immediate reward. A task that feels boring or far off, like say doing your taxes or studying for a test next month. It doesn't just feel unpleasant. It can feel physically and mentally impossible to even start. It's a chemical hurdle, not an effort hurdle. Okay, so now we have a handle on the what and the why. But let's talk about the who. Because ADHD is not a monolith. That classic stereotype of the little boy bouncing off the walls, that is just one tiny piece of a much bigger and more diverse picture. So clinically, we see ADHD show up in three main ways. You've got the inattentive type. This is often the quiet daydreamer, the one who might get totally missed, especially in girls. Then there's the hyperactive impulsive type, which is closer to that classic stereotype of someone who's always on the move. And finally, you have the combined type, which, just like it sounds, has a mix of symptoms from both. This is so important to understand. Hyperactivity doesn't always look like someone literally bouncing off the walls. For so many adults, and for people with the inattentive type, it's an internal thing. It's a brain that just won't shut off. It's constant, racing thoughts. It's this persistent feeling of inner restlessness. It's hyperactivity of the mind. And you gotta remember, the symptoms evolve over a person's lifetime. That little kid who is always told to stop daydreaming in class, they might grow up to be the adult who is struggling with chronic overwhelm, feeling like they're constantly behind, and just burning out from the massive effort it takes to keep up in a world not built for their brain. And that is why this quote hits so hard for so many people. Getting a diagnosis when you're an adult isn't about finding a convenient excuse for your past struggles. It's about finally getting an explanation. It's this moment of just profound relief where you can reframe a whole lifetime of feeling lazy or stupid or not good enough into an understanding that your brain is simply wired differently. So with this new understanding, what's next? Where do we go from here? Well, the diagnosis isn't the end of the journey. It's really the beginning of a new one that moves away from judgment and towards genuine support. But before we even talk about solutions, we have to acknowledge the very real damage that all this misunderstanding causes. When a kid is constantly told they aren't trying hard enough, they don't just feel bad in the moment. They start to internalize that message. They begin to believe that they are the problem, that failure is just part of who they are. Now, the good news is there's a whole toolbox of strategies. There isn't a single cure because it's not a disease. It's about management, and it's definitely not one size fits all. This can include building strategies that work with the ADHD brain instead of against it, changing your environment to cut down on distractions, using therapy to work through years of shame and anxiety, and for a lot of people, medication that helps regulate those key brain chemicals we talked about. And this is the fundamental goal of all ADHD support. The point isn't to erase someone's personality or to fix them. It's about giving them the tools and the understanding they need to harness the unique way their brain works, so they can navigate the world more effectively and, just as importantly, with more self-compassion. So let's end on this really powerful idea. The ADHD brain can be incredibly creative, it can be innovative, it can be intensely passionate. It sees the world from an angle that others don't. It is absolutely different, but different does not mean less. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. In our schools, in our workplaces, in our own families, what really changes for the better when we stop judging the symptoms and we start understanding the person? The potential is enormous.